Hey everyone, welcome to Navik's Hangout. My name is Navik. You might know me as that guy who's writing My Super Robot Academia alongside my best buddy X Pegasus. Yes, you might also know me as the YouTuber formerly known as Avenger Green. Now I go by Navik. Nick and I just talk about comics I enjoy on a week to week basis. It's not covering every comic I read, mind you, because then I'd be swamped, but just the stuff I think is interesting enough to make videos on. And I'm still going to be making YouTube videos and stuff and writing fanfics, but I kind of wanted to just explore a medium where I could just talk a bit more or talk a bit freely without worrying about video length. And so I wanted to try my hand at the podcast format. And this place is going to be a place where I just talk about stuff I enjoy, stuff I'm really passionate about, which is, you know, not, occasionally like novels, old TV shows, animation, video games, movies, and of course, one of the medium I'm the most passionate about, comic books. Like, because my dream is basically to one day write the Avengers or just a comic adaptation of one of my novels. So that that's something I'm probably gonna work towards. And so let me just tell you a bit about myself and how I got into reading comics, because everyone's got their origin, as it were, when it comes to how they got into comics. Most people, they get into comics because their parents bought some books for them, or they saw like a movie or a game or a cartoon that featured a hero and oh, I want to go and check out where they come from. And I was no different. I grew up with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I grew up with uh, X-Men Evolution and the Ultimate Avengers straight to DVD movies. But it wasn't until I played the Marvel Ultimate Alliance game that I realized, oh wait, Spider-Man, the X-Men, and all these other characters, they exist in the same universe. That's really cool. I want to check that out. So but of course I was a kid, so I didn't really have the money to go buy comics weekly. But I did check out the behind the scenes features on the Ultimate Avengers Blu-rays, and they talked a bunch about Kurt Busiek's Avengers runs, the new Avengers, that was the big thing that came out. And yeah, it just made me realize, oh, there's a big history behind these characters, behind particularly the Avengers. Or so I wanted to read more about that. So I ended up scouring the early internet for that, and ending up the site I went to the most was the Leader's Lair, where or someone put written summaries these of all the Avengers issues, which I was really excited for. And yeah, through deep diving through that site, Wikipedia, and Comic Vine, I basically fell in love with the team. I learned about these characters, and I wanted to read the comics about them. Unfortunately, though, the comic scene, by the time I actually got into it, around 2007, 2008, between 2007 and 2009, the Avengers weren't really their classic selves. New Avengers came out, the Civil War event had just happened, and then World War Hulk, and by the time I actually wanted to get into comics, Secret Invasion had just ended. So there was a whole bunch New Avengers, and uh Dark Avengers was coming out, and I just wasn't really interested in any of the teams and stuff. I didn't really like how Bendis was writing characters, which that's a whole another, or it's a little part of my life where I was a Bendis hater. But we all go through embarrassing points in our life. But I did see that Mighty Avengers was getting a new writer, Dan Slott, and it was his run, Mighty Avengers issue 21 through 36, that got me into collecting comic books. It was an issue that I made sure to ask my folks to take me to the comic book store each month every time a new issue dropped. Then it got me into the superhero universe. It got me into being invested in picking up a book month to month. And then obviously keeping it preserved. And heck, I actually got a few years ago, I got Dan Slott to sign the copies of the first 3 issues for me, and that is still one of my most prized possessions. And so yeah, everyone starts somewhere. And now, and I was kind of off here and there. I did pick up Ultimate Comics starting after the death of Spider-Man, and then like a few heroic age titles after the Siege event, and dropped off a bit. Got back in with Al Ewing's Mighty Avengers, which, hey, that's kind of why Mighty Avengers always has a soft spot in my heart, or whenever there's a title based on it. But my palette really expanded with DC Rebirth, Earth, and all there that whole initiative. If and that's how I expanded past like just reading Marvel comics, and I'm kind of glad I did, because let me tell you, I was kind of an insufferable Marvel fanatic back in the day. But hey, we all go through embarrassing moments in our life. So now I'm at the point where I'm reading like 20 individual issues a month, and then yeah, just a quick rundown. I'm currently reading for Marvel side of things all the Ultimate Universe titles. Those have been really good. Ultimates is still my personal favorite among those titles, and Ultimate Wolverine's going to be coming out at the time I'm recording this video. Oh, I mean, this podcast. Miles Morales Spider-Man by Cody Ziegler is still amazing. Immortal Thor's ran by the GOAT Al Ewing. And Steve Orlando's Avengers Assemble has been really fun. I'm really sad that book's only going to last 5 issues, but hey, sometimes it's best to just have something that's short and sweet than something that goes on too long. For the DC side of things, I'm picking up JSA. Just Society, you're like my favorite DC team, like favorite super team overall, next to the Avengers. Jeremy Adams is going to be doing Aquaman, and that looks really cool. Absolute Wonder Woman was amazing. Going to be getting Absolute Green Lantern when that comes out, because it's also being ran by Al Ewing. And also Batgirl by Tate Bromwell. That one's going to be that one's really cool. Well, and I'm picking up a lot of indie comics. There's the Energon Universe Image has been putting out Transformers, G.I. Joe, Void Rivals, all that. Like Ghost Machine's been doing some really cool stuff with the unnamed guys like Geiger, Redcoat, and especially Hyde Street. I've been really enjoying Hyde Street. I've also been picking up Power Rangers Prime, because, hey, lifelong Power Rangers fan, they were my big obsession before comic books. Sorry, just taking a bit of a water break. I'm also picking up a really unique story called The Fade, and that's basically kind of a comic that takes the whole concept of escapism. It kind of makes it literal when a shy main character discovers, or like that you can actually perform a ritual to take you to a fantasy world and escape from the real world. So that's going to be interesting to see. Recently finished reading Tom King's Helen of Winehorn, which that was a unique read, and just goes to show that no matter how controversial a writer could be, they can put out some good work. And yeah, so I've just been having a good time reading comics, and I like to share it with you guys. Obviously through my YouTube videos and through this week, through maybe more episodes of this podcast. That's because comics are just, I think, one of the most creative kind format you see in media in general. And don't get me, mostly because for comics, if you can think it and you can draw it, you can put it out there. There's no budget, there's no restrictions. There is some scheduling thing, but again, unlike movies, shows, and games, you're not really limited to what can be done practically, how much you could draw on a budget, and find the right actor, stuff like that, which, not to discredit them, they all have their strong suits, but I think it goes to say that some of the most critically acclaimed and anime and movies and stuff and shows, a lot of them are adaptations of comic book original ideas, and that has led some people to think that comics are just a vehicle for proving ground for ideas before they get adapted. And I don't really think that's the case. Sure, an adaptation can fix some problems that the original comic had. It could expand on stuff that's something Invincible has done. But that's kind of discrediting the whole medium as a whole, and I really don't think that should be the case. It's because, yeah, they're an art form that just deserves as much love and respect as any other. And one of the things I really like to see in comics is that that you can kind of see the evolution over time, not just of the story and not just characters, like how they change from one creative team to the next, but also just seeing a writer's like find their voice changing differently. Like Al Ewing, he started doing like some more comedic Silver Age superhero stuff, like New Avengers, USA Avengers, or kind of more goofy, campy, tongue-in-cheek story of like Loki, Agents of Asgard, with a bit of metatextual or like commentary. But then he'd start doing more high concept stuff like the Ultimates run that he did with Kenneth Rockcraft, F and Contest of Champions, and then his most critically acclaimed work, that the one that got more people like knowing his name, was the horror series Immortal Hulk, which I was a bit confused at the time because Al Ewing doing horror just sounded kind of weird. But lo and behold, he killed it on that book, and that's now considered one of the best like modern Hulk runs. And so yeah, that was really interesting to see. And yeah, it's also he's going back to like more campy Silver Age stuff with Metamorpho the Elemental Man, which I'm definitely going to be picking up in trade, but because my list is already packed and I do gotta budget myself a bit. It and another thing, it's just really cool to see like an artist change over time. Like Hirohiko Araki, he like when you start reading Joe's Bizarre Adventure, it is very clearly inspired by Fist of the North Star, and Bakio, before gradually evolving into his own thing. And because now you look at the JoJo lands, it is different from any other manga you would look at. And there's probably some people are going, wait a minute, why are you talking about manga? I thought this was about comic books. And yeah, here's my controversial hot take for you in episode 1. And so one thing I think is kind of overblown is that they try to like separate manga from comics, try to treat them as their own thing. It mostly done by people who kind of want to diss this American comic book, saying that manga is better because it's more creative, or talking about boring stuff like sales and again. And there's also on the other side, you got people who just don't like manga and they hate whenever there's like manga inspired like anime influences in comics. And honestly, it's just a ridiculous thing because at the core, they are the same medium. It's a sequential art from panel to panel, panels laid out on a singular page. There's sound effects, there's word bubbles. So you have to turn the page in order to follow the story. It's the same medium. Manga is literally just the Japanese word for comics. It's the same way like manhwa is the Korean word for comics. It's basically just splitting hairs over semantics at that point. And yeah, hey, that's what kind of why when I talk about like Hero Organization or the JoJo lands, I list those as as episodes of my comic review show because yeah, why wouldn't I? They're basically the same thing. And it also lets me talk about a wider range of subjects. It's like I could talk about how the art that Ma'am does on Star Striker Rich has some of the most brutal impacts arts you see. Like they draw punches really well. I could talk about how the art of the Miles Morales Spider-Man book looks gorgeous, or how Ivan Reyes' work on Hyde Street is incredibly detailed, or just the sheer psychedelic like art that Javier Rodriguez does. And yeah, being able to talk about them all on the same show just makes me happy, and hopefully that would make other people realize how cool a lot of stuff is. Especially because as one thing that I've learned over the years, and that's one thing that people don't often think about, there is a comic, manga, whatever, there is a comic story for everyone. Because sadly, when you think about comics, like some people, they only think about like superhero stuff from Marvel and DC. When people think about manga, they usually think of shonen in action or hentai, which that's a real shame because that's kind of like dumbing down the medium to like the most infamous and famous stuff. It's kind of like saying that like only thinking of Disney cartoons when you think of animation. That's kind of like simplifying and shortening the whole field, the whole an entire medium. And yeah, there's comics for everyone. You got superhero stuff, you got sci-fi, you got horror, you got drama, you got romance, and yeah, both both for both sides of the hemisphere, you got a really diverse pool of comics. It's like I said, I'm checking out the Fade, which feels very different from Hyde Street, which feels very different from the Ultimates, which feels very different and from Flash Gordon. And it all, and especially I've actually recently gotten into That Texas Blood by Chris Condon because I saw that he was going to be the writer for Ultimate Wolverine, so I checked out his work, and now I'm kind of getting into crime thrillers. I'm probably going to be checking out the works of Ed Brubaker, like Kill or Be Killed. That was a good recommendation I got. And so yeah, if there's one thing, so yeah, there's a comic out there for everyone, and yeah, there are some loud voices online there trying to like paint the comic book industry as like, oh, it's constantly failing or doomed, or if they don't do any specific thing or thing that they're screwed, or by having more diverse characters that's somehow alienating the original fan base. It's just a lot of gatekeeping nonsense. It's because, again, if there's one thing you take away from this podcast, I want it to be that comics are an incredible medium. And no matter what side of the world they come from, there is a story out there for you. You just need to look for it. And hopefully I'll be able to share them with you guys on this podcast. So that's all the time I got for now. This has been Navik. This has been Navik's Hangout, and I'll hope to see you guys again. Have a great day.